You're on mute, Rob.
What a start. Welcome to
full start host offense.
5 yards. Welcome to the latest Yorkshire Vlog live stream. Unbelievable. Rob Staten and Adam Nathan here with you to react to that. So the Seahawks beating the Jaguars. Weird game, really, Adam. Weird game. Very happy that the Seahawks have won, but some positives, some big positives in that game. A few negatives as well. What's your immediate reaction to what you've just seen?
Yeah, I think you have to take it. You know, any game, you're traveling that far across the country, early start. You know, of all the trap narratives that used to follow this team around, that was certainly a number of them. But I felt all week that I was pretty confident in the win. Not sure why, but just something about this team that I just have enough faith in, even after a disappointing loss last week, and they went over and got the job done. I mean, I think Jacksonville probably shown themselves to be not quite the team that a 4-1 record with some of the wins that they had suggested. I think they probably regressed to the mean slightly today after a couple of good wins. But I've been thinking all week, actually, we were pretty circumspect last week, and I think we gave them quite a big pass with the injuries for the lack of the defensive performance last week. And I spent all week thinking Kyle Shanahan took his team of pub players into SoFi and beat the Rams with an offensive performance and had no players available. Were we too kind to McDonald last week in sort of allowing them sort of off the hook? Bad defensive performance with injuries. Isn't he there because you need the defensive scheme? And I think today sort of allayed all of my fears. Like, he's managed to put something together with a real ragtag team in the secondary to make an offensive defensive front performance, and they were brilliant, and it just made me feel really, really good about the team in the season going forward.
Yeah, I think definitely this is I think for the reason you mentioned at the start, if you can go across the country to play a team that have won 4 games in a row, and they've beaten the Chiefs, they're on an emotional high. They are one of the trendier teams for those who are not in Britain, like Adam and I. When this game started immediately after the London game, it was billed as we're now going to watch one of the hottest teams in the NFL, one of the biggest surprise packages, and they played a montage of the Jaguars. So that was kind of like the story, at least over here, going into this game. Maybe that's a bit because the Jaguars are coming over to London next week, but a lot of the focus was on Jacksonville. And really, you've just got to come and win the game. That was a bitterly disappointing loss last weekend. The defense did not play well at all. You should have won that game when Darnold and the offense was playing as well as it was, but you didn't. So you've just got to find a way to win. And ultimately, that's what they did. They've won the game. The 4-2. 4-2 looks so much better than 3-3. And especially with the Rams winning, it's a chance today because the Niners are playing Tampa Bay for them to drop to 4-2 potentially as well. And then you just level with the Rams and the Niners, and it's all to play for in the NFC West. If you'd have lost this game today, especially having led 20 points to 6, and I have to say there were a couple of moments in that fourth quarter where I was fearing the worst. When they're driving to try and get back to level pegging, late in that fourth quarter, I'm worrying a little bit. But they got the job done, and there were some positives in this game. Let's start talking about the positives, Adam. Let's start with some nice big positives. Jackson Smith-Njigba, unbelievable again. And although Sam Darnold wasn't perfect, he wasn't. He did have some moments where he was maybe a little bit off target on a couple of throws, and there were 4 drives at the end that stalled pretty easily. And it looked as if they were struggling to move the ball for quite a long time at the end of that game. But that's another really good performance from Darnold. Didn't turn the ball over, had some great throws. Smith-Njigba looks great, and that supporting cast with the receivers looks like it's doing the job, Adam. It's kind of allayed all of the concerns that, you didn't have enough there.
Yeah, there's times when you're not moving the ball that you start feeling quite sort of scatty and nervy about the game. It just felt to me like it was just 2 teams that were struggling to move the ball against each other, and we just need to see how it plays out. But you've got the advantage of being 14 points up. I don't know about you, but I never felt worried or frustrated with the offense. It just felt like one of those games where it was going to be a bit of a struggle, but you've done the hard work to put yourself in a position. And you say JSN, I mean, the way in which he creates separation without elite speed, I mean, it reminds me of Doug Baldwin, the way he used to play at his very best for Seattle. Slightly different in how they play and the aggression in the two, but the way in which they're both able to create huge separation just from being skilled as opposed to necessarily athletically more gifted than someone else. is just stunning to watch. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what you thought about the offense and some of the drives that were stalling, but it didn't feel to me like, when you're watching a game and you're just tired of watching your own team play. It just sort of felt like the way that the game was transpiring.
So first of all, I have just plugged my microphone in. So can you hear me better now? Because that was what a start. Didn't turn myself off mute. Didn't even plug the microphone in. This is what happens when you've been rushing around, trying to start immediately after the game. So I thought the problem that they had, and I've seen people complaining about the play calling and saying it was conservative, Adam. I just think it's the problem that they still haven't fixed their running game. When you get to the end of a game like that, you do want to run the ball. It's not conservative to want to run the football when you've got a 1 or 2 score lead or an 8-point lead as it was at the end to try and finish the game. That's the best way to kill the clock. You're not taking any risks. You're not getting behind the sticks with a sack or anything like that. You want to run the football in the fourth quarter with a lead. So it's not conservative to do that. That's just football. The problem is they can't run the football. They've had, more than a couple of games now with this where the blocking just hasn't been very good. There were people on Twitter complaining about the split between Charbonnet and Walker, but Walker didn't get anything. Like Walker's main runs today was when he was able to get outside, and on those couple of occasions where he was able to get outside and get a bit of a runway, he made some gains. But Jacksonville were taking that outside rush away and they had no counter to it. Seattle didn't really have anything to turn to. So if you can't run the football, it's going to stall out. I don't think in that situation, just handing the ball to Sam Darnold and saying, we're going to throw every down. If they just threw 3 times, had a quick 3 and out, and then punted the ball away, or took a sack or had a turnover, everyone would be going, why are you not running the football? So sometimes you can't win as a football team. So it was frustrating. It did feel as if, why can't they just finish the game? It did feel a little bit like we've been here before. They're making this harder than it needs to be. However, when it was turned back over to the defense, Adam, they did their job. And it was far from a brilliant performance in the secondary. Like there were more mistakes. It is kind of cobbled together. I'm not sure that Shaq Griffin would be playing for any other team in the NFL. They need their guys back, but they did just enough at the end of that game to hold on. And that defensive line, Adam, that's the main positive on the defense, isn't it? I mean, that was superb today. The way that defensive line stepped up to the plate. Look, that wasn't good enough last week. We need to do something. We know we're banged up in the secondary. To have 7 sacks, 2 sacks for DeMarcus Lawrence, 2 sacks for Byron Murphy, half a sack for Leonard Williams barely goes anyway to describe how impactful he was again. Uchenna and Wosu with a sack and a half. That was a great performance by the defensive line.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought McDonald generally had the better of Liam Cohen overall. I don't know if it's, without sounding like an old man yells at clouds. I thought last week with Kubiak, there were times where pissing about with play calling was the best way I could put it, at a time where just trying to build something and build some rhythm would have been better. And it just never felt like Jacksonville were allowing themselves to get into rhythm. Like they were just pissing about with certain plays. I think Trevor Lawrence, that is, was awkward at times. You don't get to see these teams that much because you play them once every 4 years. So, and particularly on the road, you just don't get to see it. So I think I was expecting Jacksonville and Lawrence to be a bit better. I don't know if that's because we just corralled them particularly well, but defensively, I just never felt under any threat. Obviously, that touchdown they score, you do start to roll your eyes. 2 cornerbacks going to the same spot, leaving a wide open receiver. You're thinking, oh God, here we go again. But after that, the scoreline was close. But I don't know, maybe I'm being overly confident, but I never really felt like they were going to get back in the game once we'd stretched it more, outside of a touchdown. Particularly, you missed 4 points from kicks. There was no real atmosphere. I think the co-commentator said that there was a real lack of urgency that he was spotting with Jacksonville in the last drive. I just never felt like it was a really competitive game. Like, when you're at the edge of your seat watching the Seahawks plutzing what's going to happen. Just never felt like that for me today.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like, please don't throw this away, as opposed to Jacksonville are going to take it away. Trevor Lawrence is a funny one, Adam, because, he there's a lot of hindsight going on here, what I'm going to say, because I think everybody, myself included, thought, yeah, he's the legit first overall pick. But when you actually watched him for Clemson, he never really had a game for Clemson where he was the guy. Like, he took over the game. He played on a loaded team. Like when Clemson won the national championship under Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Watson was like the focal point of everything. And with Trevor Lawrence, it never quite felt that way. And in his final season at Clemson before he went, I think it was in the semi-final game that he played, he was just completely a non-factor. Like, he was just completely awful. Like, the only play he had was like some big 50-yard run in the game. And he didn't do anything with his arm. And he's come into the NFL, and you see that little flashes, don't you? Like, there was a couple of times where he evaded pressure and he threw the ball downfield. There was that fourth down play he threw across his body. It's a risky throw, but it came off. It was very well executed. He had some plays in the game, but as with you, like, you never really felt like we're watching a top quarterback here. We're watching someone who fully justifies that massive salary that he's got, that he's going to sort of drive down the field and you're not going to be able to stop him. And equally, Jacksonville's running game was as bad as Seattle's was. So they weren't doing anything there either. Their receivers are not very good. You know, they've traded all that stock away to get Travis Hunter. If you trade that much away for a receiver, that receiver has to be a difference maker very, very quickly in the NFL. Like 2 first-round picks on one player. You know, don't give me all this he plays 2 positions bollocks, because he doesn't. Like, he might play a couple of snaps in the slot corner or whatever. He's not going to play every down in the NFL. Like, he's going to end up being a receiver or a cornerback. And at receiver, he ain't doing that much. His most noticeable thing today was he actually took a touchdown off the board for them because he was lined up, his foot was offside. Now, it should be intercepted. I think it was Joe, wasn't it, who kind of had it and then threw it up in the air, and the receiver grabbed it and then ran it in. But that foot being offside took a touchdown off the board for Jacksonville, which could have been a huge swing in the game. It's a 7-point play, really, that foot from Travis Hunter. So look, I think defensive line, very good. It does make me, I don't know how you feel about this. I was coming into this weekend feeling they've got to do something on defense. They've got to try and bring somebody in. They've got to add something in the trade market. And all of the buzz, like, there's an article from Adam Schefter with a whole list of names on it this weekend that are potentially open for trade. He thinks there's going to be another dozen trades between now and the 4th of November. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of activity there. I thought, well, you've got to go and get a pass rusher. But like, watching that today, it makes me think, unless you're going to swap out somebody for somebody else and upgrade at a pass rushing position, you might be better off, if you're going to do anything, trying to get a bit of extra depth in the secondary and at linebacker, and that they may be the positions that they have to look at them, because that defensive line has got something about it. And that was without Derek Hall today. There is something there, isn't there? They just need to be a bit more consistent. They just play like that every week.
Yeah, I suppose you've seen, on a couple of weeks now, different performances from different groups. And I suppose what you have to try and take is, what do you trust the most? I think I probably trust that they need a little bit more, having seen the game last week against a really good quarterback who can properly evade pressure. Obviously, what's the aim for the season? If we're going to try and say that they can try and make a deep run in the playoffs, which I don't think is impossible given the state of the NFC. And you've seen someone like Mayfield who's just diced them up, and he has moved off platform quite a few times and evaded pressure. A miles better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. I wonder if maybe you look at the 2 games and think, well, yeah, like, the defensive line were fine against a 7 out of 10 offense, but when you come up against 8s, 9s, 10s out of 10s, you need a bit more. So I still do think I err there, that I would like to see one more player in. But with the injuries, naturally they definitely need some help in the back end, because there's just not going to be the quality to hold up. And you may not see it against the Texans next week, but I would imagine against the Commanders the week after, if McLaurin's back, and against Jaden Daniels, you're going to see like that is going to be the real test game. I don't really trust the Texans enough to cause them a huge problem. Maybe they will. Maybe the CJ Stroud will be better than he has been. But I think that Commanders game will be a really good indicator. And it'll be 3 or 4 weeks after the Buccaneers game. And those are the 2 games that I'd probably look at and say, this is how we're going to assess how good we actually are off the back of these 2, because those are probably the teams you're hopefully competing with in January.
It's hard to know what they should or shouldn't do, because, I've not got a huge amount of faith in Ty Carter. Like, he's the kind of player who will make a handful of good plays in a game, but it maybe just is a bit lacking enough for some big plays to be made against you as well. When Julian Love's back, you've got Love, Bryant, and Emenwari, who I thought played well today, as your sort of 3 who will operate as a safety. But Emenwari's been out, Love's been out. Can you cope if either Emenwari or Love have to miss an extended period of time again later in the season? And you kind of think, who could you go and get? There was part of me that was wondering, look, the Dolphins have lost. The Dolphins are an absolute disaster zone. Like the fact that they lost today with like 20 seconds left on the clock, and the play that eventually sent them down to the Chargers is a disgrace. And they may well be getting to the point where they're going to start firing their head coach and their GM and opening up the possibility of a big rebuild and trades. And the player that I was thinking of that you might maybe just make a call about, this is going to sound really left field because no one has mentioned this name at all, but it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, because the Dolphins acquired Minkah Fitzpatrick. They basically swapped him for the tight end who went to Pittsburgh. So it was, the Steelers are obviously keen to move on from Fitzpatrick. And he's playing quite well for the Dolphins. Like he is playing reasonably well, and he is healthy, and he's experienced. And I just wonder, could someone like that be available at a very cheap price? Because the Steelers basically just did an Ernest Jones for him. Like, could you ultimately go and acquire somebody like that just so they've got that bit of extra quality on the back end and a bit of extra competition, and you're secured against Love being out? So that was a name that kind of cropped into my head. I don't understand why they're not using a bit more of this cap space anyway to sort of improve their depth there. And then at cornerback, is there somebody that they can go and get who is simply an upgrade over Shaquille Griffin and Nehemiah Pritchett? I mean, it's hard to know. It's not, the league is not deep at cornerbacks right now, but maybe there is somebody that you can go and get there to chuck into the mix. So that, I think Fitzpatrick is somebody that I just wonder if the Dolphins are thinking, we brought this guy in for like, what the hell, let's have a look. We need a safety. And if they are rebuilding now and he's not going to be part of the future, he's 29, would they be prepared to sort of chuck him your way for, a throwaway pick? Maybe. It's just sort of a name that I wanted to throw out there.
Well, it is going to be someone like that hasn't got a huge amount of club control, but is still, a big name. Like I sillily was just looking up Carl Hamilton's contract from the Ravens, but obviously they're not going to fall apart to the point, and he has just signed his big deal. But I was wondering if maybe there's a reconnection with Mike McDonald you can make there, but that's not going to happen. So someone like Minkah does seem like makes sense. And as you were talking about Max Crosby in the week, someone that has got control but not a huge amount of dead cap. If you took him, would the Raiders maybe look to move on if they're not doing particularly well? But teams like the Dolphins, I mean, they look like they're going to have a massive clear out and rebuild, at all levels. So maybe that is a good one. It's a name that I've not heard linked before, but if Schneider's shown anything, it's the ability to go and get that sort of player for not a huge amount of return in the middle of the season. So why not?
Yeah, and he'd be very cheap this year. He would cost barely anything in terms of salary this year, so that's not the problem. Next year, his base salary is $15.6 million, but you could cut him and it wouldn't cost you anything, or you could rework that deal if he played particularly well and you wanted to keep him around. So I don't know. You just look at teams like Miami are a great team right now at 1-5 to think rebuilds come in, they're going to trade some players, and if you're not in the hunt for a Bradley Chubb or a Jalen Phillips, the pass rushers, could someone like Minkah Fitzpatrick be an option for you? I don't know. Just a name I wanted to throw out there as well. I mean, people may well say Jordan Brooks and people like that at Miami as well, who are obviously formerly of Seattle. So I guess that is also a possibility. But maybe worth having a look at that Miami roster in the next couple of days and seeing who you might fancy going shopping for. So a few other things that I wanted to talk about today. The third down's not very good, Adam. I don't know why that was so much, but when you're 1 of 12, was it just that kind of game? Because the Jaguars were 4 of 16 on third down, although they were 3 of 3 on fourth down. It's quite hard to read much into any of these things, because I'm going to have a look at the quarterback stats as well. Like, I can see this being the kind of game where Sam Darnold gets a ridiculously low PFF grade for some stupid reason. And yet, it's 16 of 27, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, only the 1 sack conceded by Seattle. That's a good performance. And his, quarterback rating's 122 compared to Trevor Lawrence's 97, despite the fact that Lawrence also threw 2 touchdowns. So it's a good day from Darnold. It's a good day from the passing game, but still third down was crap. Jackson Smith-Njigba. Let's talk a bit about Jackson Smith-Njigba before we get into the super chats. how good is Jackson Smith in Jigba? I mean, are we talking here about legitimately one of the best 6 or 7 receivers in the NFL now, confirmed? Or is he just the benefactor of, he is obviously talented, but he's the benefactor of Sam Darnold playing well and the fact that he's the number 1 receiver? Is that the main reason, or is he just legitimately one of the very best in the game right now?
I hate the bit of both answer, but it's hard not to go down that route. I mean, whether he's in the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase caliber, I don't know. It doesn't really matter because he's our guy and he's been brilliant so far. So, who cares? But I think actually him being the number 1 guy can almost act against him at times because, yes, there are Seahawks players that are making catches. And, you got Cooper Kupp that does make the odd big third down play. But it in sort of general play, first and 10, second and 8 or whatever, you do feel like it's only JSN that the defense are really going to worry about as like he's going to get, who else on the team is going to get 8 catches for 80 yards one day? It doesn't appear to be a load of players in the roster that have got that capability. You've got Barner, who made his big catch today. Cooper Kupp made his big catch when necessary. Arroyo got 1 or 2, I think. Horton, I don't think did an awful lot. So in a way, I think JSN's number 1 status being such a number 1 here could almost act against him in that sense, because he does feel like a guy that you should be doubling basically at all times and say to Seattle, what else have you got? So to be coming away with the stats that he is and just the separation at times, like the catches aren't even contested often because he's just beaten the guy so embarrassingly. I think we're watching like a properly class operator at work, and thank goodness that he's ours because I just think he's terrific.
I would say I've just had a look now because I asked you that question without really doing any homework, which is I suppose bad form on my behalf. But I had a look, and if you just type in best NFL receivers, like the results churn out that Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are the best according to the Google version of AI or whatever it is, which I think is fair enough. I don't think JSN's as good as Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. Like they are different level, from a different planet good. They are very, very good. But then the next sort of tiers, it says Amon-Ra St. Brown, CD Lamb, AJ Brown, Puka Nacua. I don't think they're better than JSN. I actually think after Jefferson and Chase, I think Nacua and JSN are the top of the next level. I don't think that it's hard to watch AJ Brown at the minute and think that he's better than them. It's hard to watch CD Lamb and think that CD Lamb's not playing that well. Pickens is actually playing a lot better for Dallas in the minute. He may be better than CD Lamb currently. And Amon-Ra St. Brown's very good, but it always feels like they're very good at sort of scheming for him. He's a very good player. He may be maybe it's them 3. Maybe it's Nacua, JSN, and Amon-Ra St. Brown after Jefferson and Chase. Do you think that's fair? And if that is, then he's a top 5 receiver right now.
Yeah, I mean, those names you said, if you put all the names into a hat, jumbled them up, and then each of the 7 teams you named got one of the receivers that you listed there, I would be disappointed to get AJ Brown or CD Lamb out of that list. And I'd probably be very happy with whoever I got out of the rest, and exceptionally happy if I got Chase and Jefferson. So to that end, yeah, I suppose he is currently playing as a top 5 guy. Because I think if you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, you'd be very happy, and Puka Nacua, you'd be happy as well. And I imagine those teams would be very happy to get JSN right now too. So yeah, look, I mean, you can Maddenify anything and try and rank it by the speed rankings or whatever, but ultimately you've got the guy that you've got, and right now there's not many that you change him for.
And then with Darnold, how do we describe Darnold right now, Adam? Because when he scored that second touchdown, I was like thinking, yeah, okay, like it's becoming harder and harder to fight that. Yeah, we've got to wait and see. Like you kind of think this is the guy. Like this is it. This is the player that you've kind of been waiting for. The Seahawks have pulled off a Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield thing here, where they've just given somebody another chance and they've actually gone on to become an exceptional player for you. This is not just clearly a Kevin O'Connell thing in Minnesota. He's clearly a very talented player who has just needed to go on a bit of a journey to get to this point. But then obviously when they have 4 drives where they can't finish the game and you think, okay, perhaps a Mahomes or an Allen or somebody like that, at the elite level, or Burrow might have just finished that, got something going, made things happen. It's like, okay, that's got to take that into account as well. And I suppose there's always the chance that he has a terrible game in the future, and it all comes, and he has like a 5-6 game flop, and we all get a bit of perspective there, Adam. But I don't know. I kind of want to fast forward to the point where I'm just sort of embracing that he's the guy, like, because he is fantastic to watch. Like the best thing for me today was that he is capable of the big plays. He's very capable. The arm talent's very good. There was one play where it wasn't even a completion, where he was under pressure. He just had to get it out. He was in the pocket, and he just kind of a little flick of the wrist, and the ball shot over towards the far touchline. And you just think the fact that he can do that is a major plus. There are not many quarterbacks in the league that can actually do that. I've just watched Mac Jones throw an interception straight to somebody. Should have been a pick six, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defender fell over. He can't do that. Like, he can't physically do that kind of throw, and Sam Darnold can. So it's very, very exciting. And I don't know. It's great to watch. I'm not going to go on to Geno Smith today because I've done a lot of that the last couple of weeks. But I can't just help this. I'm just so pleased, Adam, that this has worked out. Because if it had gone the other way around, it would have been a living nightmare being a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, I feel supremely comfortable watching him play as the quarterback right now. There are still the odd heart and mouth moments. There was a third down in the fourth quarter where I think he was under a bit of pressure and he sort of looped a ball straight down the middle. It looked like if the defensive line from Jacksonville had a bit more care, could have just caught it. And there was one when Arroyo slipped over, it might have been the first drive of the game, that looked like an errant pass, but I think it was just a slip that made it look bad. Look, there's always going to be a thing with Darnold and me anyway. Maybe this is not reflected by everyone else, but that I am always going to be worried that there's a meltdown coming, because it has always happened, or has often happened, and it's hard to shake it off. But you've got to treat people as you find them and take them as you find them. And thus far, I don't really think we could have asked for much more from what we're getting. They're not asking for him to be Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. They're not asking for a magician. They're just asking for a guy to execute to the level that they need to, and asking for them to execute. The game plan isn't set up to be a magician. They were very happy today to take their punts and just, manage the game and go and win it that way. So they're not asking him to, scramble for 17 yards to make a third down. It was just do the job, get out, go home with a win. And I don't really think there's much more you can ask from Darnold thus far. He's been as advertised and better, I would say. I think you have to be thrilled with what you're getting so far.
Buccaneers have just scored a touchdown, so they turned that interception into 7 points. So they are leading the Niners 7.0, which is good to see. I think this might sound a bit strange, because obviously you want to win the games. You want to win all of the games. And Seattle could, in a parallel universe, Adam, could be 6-0. They were driving in the red zone to beat the Niners. They should have not given up the touchdown late in that Niners game anyway to even be behind. Like, if Reed Willem picks that off, maybe that's the end of the game anyway, and they just drive it out and that's it. Last week, if there was even 50% of that defensive line performance you saw today, or even just 10% less terribleness from the secondary, you would have been able to win that game last weekend, and they could be 6-0. And there's no really other game where you thought, yeah, but you could equally say they should have lost against the Cardinals. They shouldn't. They hammered the Saints, and they easily handled the Steelers, and probably made this harder work than they needed to anyway. Has Geno Smith been intercepted again? I don't know if it's an interception or a fumble. I just saw the
Someone
Titans.
said Cody Barton touchdown. Would that be a pick six?
Cody Barton has been credited with a touchdown, but I think that Geno Smith was doing that as if to say my arm was going forward. Okay. So I think it's a fumble. Yeah, I'm seeing the replay here. So it is a fumble rather than an interception. But still a touchdown. It's one of them where they're going to watch it back. It's hard to say whether his arm is coming forward or not. So it's going to be the tuck rule. Oh, they've confirmed the TD apparently. So there you go. Another turnover for Geno.
So it's not an interception or a fumble. It's an incomplete pass or a fumble, right?
And apparently they have confirmed the touchdown. So Cody Barton has scored a touchdown. I mean, of all the people as well.
That's mad. Everyone in the chat is in a complete scramble here. You've got two people saying yes, and then changing, both of them saying the opposite, and then both changing for the opposite, which is really quite funny to watch.
Oh, hang on. So there's a scoring
Fumble
review
on a
going
sack.
Yeah, Pete looks. Oh God, Pete's face. Pete, why are you there, Pete?
I was going to say, right, Pete Carroll must be so thrilled that Belichick has come on board and made a worse decision than him of like a legend taking a job he just should never have taken. Because I feel like no one's talking about what Pete Carroll has done. And there was this assumption he was going to go in there and change the culture, and you know what Pete's going to do. We knew they could have, if Tom Brady would just checked in and watched any of our streams over the past few years, we could have saved them a lot of money.
Yeah, well, he probably should have done. The thing is that you've got to know when to call it a day. Like when you have got more money than you will ever need, and that your great grandkids are going to be set up for life because you've got generational money now for years to come, as Belichick and Carroll both have. I think you've really got to think about, right, what's realistic here. And Belichick should have realized as soon as Brady went and he was having to deal with people like Mac Jones and Jacoby Brissett, like, if I quit now, then like legend status, never have to buy a drink in New England ever again, can go and just peacefully have the 20-year-old girlfriend that he's got or whatever, and no one will really care. They'll just go look at Bill enjoying his retirement or whatever. And yet he's gone to North Carolina and made himself look like such a tit that that could easily end up being the legacy now, Adam, is Belichick was great with Brady. Without Brady, he was rubbish. And look how much of an embarrassment he made of himself when he was at North Carolina. And now with Pete Carroll, it's a very different situation for Carroll, as you rightly pointed out. But if this continues being as bad as it is, people are going to rightly say, well, when they had the Legion of Boom, it was great. But then as soon as the Legion of Boom went away, it wasn't that great in Seattle. And then he went to Las Vegas and it was crap there as well. And you think if you'd have just called it a day in like 2017 or whatever, he goes down, fantastic, legend, did everything, all of that. Sometimes you've just got to quit while you're ahead and not just keep forcing it and forcing it and forcing it. And really, though, as much as it's not so much their fault, it's like somebody should, you're in the bar, someone take the car keys off them. Like Bill Belichick should never have been given the job in North Carolina, and the Raiders should have never given Pete Carroll the job. But anyway, so I don't know whether that touchdown was confirmed or not in the end, but
I think they've taken it off.
Yeah, they've taken it off. That's a shame. But it was quite funny, like looking up and seeing that there was the 50-yard touchdown for Carroll.
We had a good 6 minutes.
We did. We had a good time with that. But so before we get to the super chats, then, so I agree with you. Like Darnold, he does look like, there are sort of passes where you think, oh, and that was lucky, and there was a couple of those last week as well. But he is playing well enough to think, do you know what, the Seahawks can play at a level that is enjoyable. Like there is a lot of crap quarterbacks out there, and the Seahawks don't have one of them. So good from him. Right, let's look at some of these super chats. This one from Adam, and Adam Bomb, it says, dime bag Darnold. Thank you for that, Adam. There you go. There's his new nickname. Nico says, don't see this defense holding up all season without Schneider cooking up a big trade before the deadline. Do you think it, so I'm going to take that literally. He says big trade, Adam. He thinks they need to have a big trade. Like not just we've gone and brought in somebody for a sixth. Like he's thinking big trade, get somebody in. Is that what is needed here? Because it's one thing to shut down, I suppose, Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, who I think Liam Cohen and the Jags are a better opponent than maybe some people think. And I think you've got to give the Seahawks defensive line a lot of credit today. But they didn't do it against the Buccaneers. And, and I was talking with Puck on Puck Sports this week. He was pointing out like they didn't fare very well against some other, high octane offenses last year. Have they got to go and do something here? Have they got to go and bring in a big trade? I'm more inclined to think they need better depth than necessarily a big trade. I would happily take a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson if one's going, because I think they're top players. But he's talking about it needs to be a big trade or this defense won't hold up. What are your thoughts on Nico's comment there?
Yeah, look, I think this defense and the defense we expect to play most weeks are probably quite two different propositions, right? I mean, if you're telling me that Witherspoon and Woolen and Love aren't going to play for the next 6 weeks, then yeah, I think they probably do need some help. But if we're on the assumption that, we've got, 4-2, are they going to come back to a team that's still 500? Maybe they're 6-4 when they're fully fit. I don't think they need a big trade, but I think you're right. If they can get a reinforcement of if they can get a blue chip talent like a Crosby or a Hendrickson, absolutely. But I don't think, I don't think there's a need for sort of anything mad if they're going to be healthy. I mean, I was thinking that I wanted to reassess our discussion on Micah Parsons from the offseason, just because only based on how the college season looks like it's transpiring, that it doesn't appear to be a huge amount of talent. Because I think one thing we discussed was, do you want to give up that much potential growth in the next couple of years? We may not have a quarterback. Now, if you could go back and do it all again now, knowing what you've seen out of Sam Darnold and knowing what the college season looks like, would you be more inclined to have gone and done something like that?
Let me share this. So can you see that okay, everybody? You can see that. This is Schefter's list. So this is Schefter's list of potential trade candidates. So, they're not going to trade for a quarterback or a running back. Adam, you tell me, are there any names here that float your boat? Because I don't think they need a receiver, but purely because they've been with Clint Kubiak in New Orleans, it's worth noting that Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are on this list, and they have worked in this offense before. So Clint Kubiak may well just turn around to them and go, "Oh, they're really, really good. So go and get one of these guys," purely for the opportunity to go and land a talent. I don't see them doing anything on the offensive line. I know people go, look, Joel Bitonio. I loved Joel Bitonio in the draft. That was 15 years ago. He's getting on now. They're not going to trade for Wyatt Teller. People keep talking about them trading for Wyatt Teller, but he's the guy who seriously injured Uchenna Nwosu. So they are not going to go and acquire him. I'd be stunned if they did. Kevin Zeitler has seen better days now. I don't.
It's another post-game show. We're not even talking about the offensive line, which is how nice is that?
Well, it is nice. And look, the running game was crap. We've all kind of acknowledged that, but they gave up one sack, and in that sack, Adam, it was an all-out blitz. And Sam Darnold, for some reason, that was one of the bad plays from Darnold today. He kind of just stood there like a lemon and took the hit. You're kind of thinking, if I've got enough time to think, you've got to get rid of that, Sam. It's an all-out blitz, and then he gets sacked. Like, you think there's got to be a hot route there. There's got to be someone get the ball out of your hands, man. And if there isn't, then that's poor scheming. Because it was an all-out blitz. And I'm sure on the replay that Torrey Horton was kind of just settled down into a big open empty space that they could have got the ball to him. So I'm not going to blame the offensive line for that. They have to work on the run blocking, but I don't know whether putting another new face in there who might not be completely down with the scheme is the best idea. Right, so we're kind of onto the defensive play. Like Trey Hendrickson's listed there because the Bengals have traded for Joe Flacco. And to be fair, they're tied with the Packers after one quarter, so they're playing competitive football here. I just don't see them. Although the yardage difference is 114 yards to the Packers and 1 yard to the Bengals, so that might be the scoreline might be deceptive there for that one. But if they're trading for Joe Flacco, they are not imminently blowing everything up. There's a few weeks to go, I think, until the Bengals will be at that point. Keon White was an interesting one, Adam, because he is obviously very athletic. He had 5 sacks last year for the Patriots. I was looking that up last night when this article dropped. He has basically just been shunted to one side by the Patriots. Like they're not using him. He just doesn't seem to fit. His face or his play doesn't fit for Mike Vrabel. So he is somebody who could be an upgrade over a Mike Morris.
Did you mention Cam Jordan on one of your shows in the last week?
I did not.
Did someone? I'm sure I heard you on a show and someone mentioned him. Maybe it was Jeff on Monday? I can't remember.
It might have been Jeff or Brian. I don't know. I mean, I always assumed that Cam Jordan had just kind of made his peace that he was going to finish his career with the Saints.
He'd look weird in a different jersey, wouldn't he?
He would. But but it was interesting. Today there was an article that I think the Saints went to Alvin Kamara and said, "What do you want to do?" And he was like, "I want to stay here. I don't want to be traded." So I think they're going to do him a solid and not trade him. Mm-hmm. Now, there's been no report about Cam Jordan in that regard. So it makes you wonder, does Cam Jordan have a different take on that? Does Cam Jordan think, actually, I would like to go and play somewhere else. I loved Cam Jordan and had him mocked as like a top 5 pick. I mean, this. I feel like I'm obliged to say this, Adam, because people never really bring up the hits that you have. But I thought Cam Jordan, who was like the 25th overall pick, should have been a top 5 pick in his draft, and he's had a fantastic career. And I would be open to that, for a cheap price, to just add him into the mix. I don't know if he'd fancy a trip to Seattle. He's from the West Coast, isn't he? Because he went to university in Cal, so he might be more inclined to do that than maybe head over to like the Northeast. But and then you've got Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips in there, who I think either of those players would be interesting, but it's whether or not they feel like they need another big name edge. And then as we get further down the list, you can see Reek Woolen's name is on there, but the only other cornerback is Roger McCreary. He's got tiny arms. And then
Tony Adams is 55, isn't he? That's never going to work. He was wooden when he was 20 years ago. He must be 60. Or that's never. Schefter, you've got that one completely wrong, mate. There's no chance of that working.
For our American viewers here, Adam is a big Tottenham Hotspurs fan, and there is a famous old rugged centre half who's played for Tottenham's biggest rivals, Arsenal, called Tony Adams, and there you go. So anyway, Tony Adams is probably not going to be traded to Seattle anyway with the way that he's played over the last couple of years. But people might go, "Oh, Kyle Duggan, why not?" I mean, his career seems to have faded a little bit as well. The point I'm basically making here, Adam, is when there's only 4 defensive backs on the list and one of them is your player already, it does not speak to the idea that there's going to be a lot of options here to upgrade your secondary. So it might be that's just not possible. And if it isn't, as much as I want to give praise to John Schneider for the Love Geno swap, the DK Metcalf trade, an off-season of success, I think one of the failures they've had is how the hell have you ended up with $22 million in effective cap space and not managed to bring in a couple of veteran players to pad things out here that are better than Shaquille Griffin, who for the first quarter of that game looked like someone had won a raffle to play in the game today.
Yeah, not to sort of be your own producer on another one of your shows, but I'd be interested if you asked in the collective what you thought the reasoning for that money being left open was. People that are maybe living in Seattle and maybe slightly more in the know. Is it a cash consideration? Do they need it for next year? Because they've never done that, like had that amount of money just sat there waiting for something to happen. And normally when you see the Seahawks opening up money, which does get well reported, that normally leads to a move that happens quite soon after. So what do you reckon's happened there?
So it is quite hard to sort of work it out, because if they hadn't got cap space in 2026, which they have, they've got $68.4 million, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th most. So let's say they had like $20 million. My answer would be, well, it's obvious they want to roll over the money so that they can pay, a bunch of players who are coming towards their final year of their contracts extensions, and they want to keep the core together. That's the obvious solution. But when you have that much money for 2026 already, you think, well, there's no reason for that. And then you think, okay, well, maybe they get tight down. No, they've got 112 million in effective cap space for 2027. So they have more than enough room to extend. Let's say they wanted to extend Charles Cross, Ken Walker,
Reek Woolen. For the sake of argument.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant. And let's say that they give Boya Mafe a 2-year deal as well. And it's not massive money because he's not got any sacks, but they could do all of that. Like if they want to do all that right now, they could do all of that without needing the 22 million that they have now. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm starting to wonder whether it was just that the options they just didn't rate the options available, or that maybe their priorities were, Will Fries until it wasn't, and Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Lawrence, and they kind of went after those guys, and some of the others that would have maybe been interested in went elsewhere because they've been prioritizing things. I don't know, and maybe it is just a big trade thing. Like there's been 1 or 2 whispers, Adam. I know that like the Seahawks would be up for like some big splash trade if the opportunity arises, and they've done that the last 2 years. So it might be just that they're keeping their options open there, and the worst case scenario is you roll that money forward and just use it next year. So I think it's probably that. It's probably a bit of weren't that asked about the options in free agency, wanted to sort of play it by ear, wanted to see what trade options would be available in training camp and then before the deadline. And if there's nothing that emerges, well, we don't lose the money. We keep it for next year. So I think that's probably what it is. But I will say right now, I will be shocked if Seattle don't do something before the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to do something before the deadline. It's just how big it is, Adam. It's how big that deal is. And obviously, I wrote the piece this week talking about Max Crosby. That's not with any expectation that the Raiders are going to be shuffling Max Crosby out the door. It's simply to point out how easy it is to trade for him. Like, typically, you would not be able to do that. Puck asked Mike Garafolo, or the day after I went on with Puck, the day after I wrote the article, and he put to Mike, could that be a possibility? And Mike's reaction was, he probably won't be able to do it because the contract will be too much. Because that's the assumption. That's why I wrote the article. The assumption is that the contract, you won't be able to trade it because he only signed it this year. But the contract is set up to trade him if wanted. So if they lose to the Titans today, I wonder if that's a thing next week. Like the Raiders are thinking long term and they're willing to consider an offer. And if somebody gave Raiders 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, I think they'd do it. Would you do that?
No, that's too much for a guy that age. That the way in which trades happen in the NFL, that seems like a lot. I mean, that's Micah Parsons' consideration for Max Crosby, and I think Crosby is a level below. Is that unfair? I mean, would you have done the Parsons thing in retrospect? Like, you know, I know we spoke about other trades. You know, if two first rounds feels rich for my blood for Max Crosby, if it's a case of, you know, if they're happy to trade him, yeah, you're not going in there and saying we got to blow you out the water. You know, if he wants to go, presumably he's got a no trade clause in that contract as well, I would imagine. So there'd have to be some sort of consideration on his side. That just shocks me. That would shock me if it was that much.
I think you're probably right that Parsons is. I think Parsons, based on age, production, athleticism, is probably in that top tier, and maybe there's only him and Myles Garrett in that top tier, or maybe Myles Garrett's on a tier on his own with. No, actually, I want to correct that. Probably Garrett and Bosa, Nick Bosa, then maybe Parsons,
with maybe TJ Watt.
I don't think TJ Watt's that good anymore. I think the age has caught up with him a bit. So I'd go Garrett, Bosa, Parsons. And then I think the question is, where does Crosby fit in all of that? Now, it doesn't look as if the Raiders are going to lose to the Titans because they've just turned the ball over on the 1 yard line and they're winning 3-0. So I'm guessing that the Titans are not going to win this game. So it might be a bit of a moot point. And I don't think the Raiders will trade Max Crosby if they can pick up the odd win here and there. And it might be one for the end of the season. But I don't know. If it's always one of those, like, it's a crap draft next year. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Like, it's so hard to find players for this draft class. You are almost certainly, if you are picking anything after, it may even be the team that picks 10th overall will end up taking a player that probably would have gone 35th last year. Like, it's really, really difficult to find first round picks. So the quality of that first round pick next year is diminished already. And then you're sort of looking a year ahead. Is a pick in the following year like a second rounder anyway? You know, that's kind of how you have to view these things. So, and with the Parsons one, would I have rather them done that? I think I'm going to trust them just because Adam Dirty's worked with him before. And if Adam Dirty was going to vouch for Micah Parsons, I think he'd be here now. I think they'd have done that. So, and by all accounts, they were never even linked with it. Like, Green Bay with the team constantly linked. I think they would have put up a good old fight for him if they were interested. So I don't know. So I'm not sure, and I'm not sure what I would do with Crosby. I'm not against the idea of going all in to bring him in, thinking that could be the final thing. But I just think the way watching that game today, I just think the biggest problem is your depth at the secondary and your linebacker position. I think that's where I'd be looking personally. Anyway, let's get back to the super chats because we've got a few of them. Loma Boy says vet signings paying off big time. D Law was a monster. He was fantastic today. Coop had some great plays and got fired up. Sam continues to be a stud. Props to John. Yeah, I think some good comments there. Really appreciate the super chat. Flash says the forced usage of Zach Charbonnet has to stop. Every time he touches the ball, it's a drive killer. We are still in need of an edge pass rusher. So I'm going to disagree with it, Flash, here, Adam, and push back on this a little bit. I appreciate that Zach Charbonnet was ineffective today as a runner. But, 12 carries for 24 yards, played 10 carries and 34 yards, and one of Ken Walker's runs went for 10 yards. So neither running back had anything to work with today. Like that was, I think you could have had any runner in the backfield and it would have been awful. Now they rushed for 60 yards on 2.3 yards per rush. Now Ken Walker being a tiny bit better than Zach Charbonnet does not justify people going like, you've got to keep Zach Charbonnet off the field. And in week 1, when Ken Walker was coming onto the field, everyone was groaning. So, and saying Zach Charbonnet should be the runner. So I don't think it's right to say that just Ken Walker should get all the touches and that Zach Charbonnet is no good. I think it's fair to say that Zach Charbonnet, for whatever reason since the injury, has not come back and looked very good. And if he's not healthy, they'd be better off just resting him and running Ken Walker while that's going on. But I don't think that Zach Charbonnet is suddenly useless, and I don't think it's going to be one of those things, Adam, whereby there's already enough to complain about with the secondary. We don't need to complain about the running back being rotated in, because I think it's the complete running game is just not good enough for the minute.
Yeah, I think the only issue I would have is maybe in the order in which they're being used, and this is purely just based on getting a feel for when you watch it. I always feel like Walker struggles to come in and be the rotation guy, and probably prefers to be the starter of the two nominally and get a few plays in. And Charbonnet is probably better at coming in and being a replacement guy, even if they have the same number of carries. And it's just something about Walker's rhythm that doesn't strike me as he can get going if he's not in it early regularly. And I think he has got a higher upside. I don't think that should be in any doubt. His ceiling plays are much higher than Charbonnet's. And so I just wonder if maybe just flipping how the order in which they're used might get you a bit more overall. Because it just feels like Walker's one of those that when he's not in the game early, he sort of comes in a bit lackadaisical and not quite feeling that it's sort of his day.
Yeah, I agree with that. He also mentioned we're still in need of an edge pass rusher. I know we've talked a bit about it, but do you think that's right? Do the Seahawks need an edge pass rusher? Because Lawrence played very well today, got a couple of sacks. Chenna Nwosu's playing well. Boya Maffei's not doing very much at all, which is a crushing disappointment, really. You'd hope for more from him. Derek Hall's currently injured, but will come back. It seems to be playing quite tough, Adam. If you bring somebody in, like if you bring in a Henriksen or a Max Crosby for that matter, one of these guys has to basically not see the field. Like if you're making a big trade for somebody like that, that person is playing, more often than not. They are going to be on the field a lot, which means that Derek Hall isn't, or DeMarcus Lawrence isn't, or Chenna Nwosu isn't. Like is a big splash pass rusher really what is needed now, or is that just a case of? For me, it's more based on today. It's more of if the opportunity is there to get someone great at value, go and do it. But it's not they need to go and do this, otherwise the season's going to go down the toilet. I think that to me is more about what can you get in the secondary.
Yeah, I don't think it's a pressing urgency. I think you saw today what can be done if things are clicking and everything's working, and maybe you're not playing against the best of teams that you have in the past. Rewind 7 days ago, or 7 days less 3 hours, and we just finished watching the Buccaneers game. You might have thought, God, we need a bit of help there, don't we? So I've always looked at this 3 games as a set. Today, the Texans and the Commanders, and that'll give us probably the best overview after 8 games of where the team actually is. So it's probably not the thing I'd rush into in the next couple of weeks. The deadline is when? Is it the middle of November?
November the 4th.
So that is just the day after the Commanders game, I think, which I think is the Monday night, the 3rd.
Could be.
I think we've got is it Texans on next Monday?
I'm just pulling it up now.
Sorry, I've done you in there.
So it's the 3rd of November is the Commanders game.
Yeah.
I think it's the 2nd in America though, isn't it? Like the 3rd of November.
Is it Sunday night?
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, it must be
Sunday night. It's Sunday night football, yeah. And then it means it's 2 days after the Commanders game.
So that gives you that for me is the time where you sit down and assess what you actually need, because I think you've then seen you're probably up against in 4 games in a row of at least probably top 15, top 16 teams in the NFL. And I think that's probably going to give you the best barometer of where there's a need to do something. I would be surprised, not unpleasantly, but just surprised if they felt that they needed to go and do something right now.
Graham says, D-line was great, but feel like we've got away with one there thanks to Trevor Lawrence being poor. Now get me onto that plane to Seattle for next week. Oh, Graham, have a good time. Well, you may well see somebody else on the plane.
You might. Graham, when are you flying? I'm flying out on Thursday morning from Heathrow.
There you go.
And if anyone is at the Texans game on Monday, I think Curtis is there. I'm going to see him for a drink. I think Jeff might be around the area. I'll be wearing a blue throwback Nick Ballore 44 jersey. Now, I can promise you no one else will be. So if you see that jersey, it will definitely be me. Do come and say hello, and let's have a drink for sure.
I want to hear people when I'm doing this after the Texas game. I want someone to go in and say, I saw Adam at the game. Obviously, Adam will not be there because Adam may well be 3 sheets to the wind. Adam.
That's a bit of an old northern phrase that I'm not entirely sure what it means.
It means you'll be pissed.
Yes, probably will be pissed. But I mean, it's a 7 p.m. local time kickoff. I mean, I think that's got to be the latest game that's ever kicked off in Seattle.
Well, I can't remember a game. Not in pre-season, it's quite common because the psychopaths amongst us have stayed up to watch those games.
The only one I can think of is maybe the championship game in 2013 when they beat the Niners, which was the second of the championship games.
No, I don't think there's been a non-preseason game kick off this late since I started following them.
No,
but I'm sure the chat will tell us if that is the case. I've had to book a day off work for the following day because I just can't imagine staying up till 7 o'clock in the morning and then going to work. So there we go. That's next week.
We're on the same flight, Graham, definitely. So maybe I'll see you there.
There you go. Well, we might not have the blower jersey on the flight.
I'm not going to be on my jersey on the flight. That's a bit much.
If you hear someone talking about Spurs, then you'll know you've hit the jackpot. Nick says, do you think Seattle needs to invest first or second round picks on the interior O-line next year? The inability to run the ball cannot be tolerated. I mean, look, I'm open to it as I was this year. You know, they spent a top pick on a guard this year. I'm not against them spending a first or second round pick on a guard next year. As it happens, you know, I think some of my favorite players that I've seen so far for this draft are interior offensive linemen. I think Spencer Fano, some people, I think he's a right tackle, but a lot of people think he might have to kick inside. He's a tremendous player. I think Vega Ione from Penn State, the left guard, has been fantastic. I think he is someone who may well end up getting a first-round grade on my board and be one of the few that do because he's playing that well, even though Penn State absolutely stink. Brian Parker, I wrote about this week, I think is a top 50 player. Jennings Dunker, I think, is a top 50 player. I think Francis Mayagoa from Miami, the right tackle, is going to have to kick inside. I think he's potentially someone who's very, very interesting there. So I'm not against that. And if that's what it needs to be, that's what it needs to be. But what I would say, Adam, is I don't think the running game is reliant. I don't think the reason the running game is struggling is because Anthony Bradford's playing. I think the line as a group need to work this out. I know. I think Bradford has some bad plays on tape. We've all seen them online. But I think Bradford's become like a bit of a scapegoat now, where like everybody just assumes he's every snap he's awful, and that you just need to replace him, and that the running game will suddenly be great. And the O-line will be amazing. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure, but I am open to a high pick on the line again. Always will be.
But they also don't feel like a running team to me. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. But when you watch a team play and you try and get a feel for their identity and what they're trying to do, it never strikes me that I never assume they're going to run it. So I wonder if there's a part commitment to that, why they're not been that great. I think the commentator who, I mean, the best plays the commentator had today was when the sound cut off. I think that was sweet relief for everyone when the commentary wasn't working. Good bloody hell, they were awful, the pair of them, weren't they? But he said that we run at a 50% rate or something. I may have misheard him, or he probably got his stat wrong. But yeah, it's probably two things to talk about there. But they don't feel like a running team to me.
Yeah, I think I get what you mean. Like, you don't ever feel as if they're going to win a game with a running game. I don't anyway. Like, when the offense is humming, you kind of feel the running game is going to have to complement the passing game, not the other way around. And I don't know how they fix that, because it seems as if teams are doing a very good job defending the outside stuff. That when they bounce it out wide and they run outside zone, teams are doing a very good job with that. And then when you filter things inside, they're just not getting any push. There's no sort of lanes evolving. It's not just the right guard that's the problem there. Nobody seems to be getting anything. There's when have you seen, like, I always kind of feel like, when a running game is working, because you will have a couple of runs where it's up the middle and you get sort of 1 yard, 2 yards, whatever. But then they'll break off a 15-yard run. And you never truly feel like that's coming for Seattle. It just feels like every time they run inside conventionally, it's going to be a crap run. It's just almost like a wasted down. And then there was this one run, I can't remember when it happened in the game, but you probably remember the play, where it was a really slow developing run. I think it was in the shotgun, and like Darnold gets the ball, then delayed handoff to the running back. And there were just two defenders like ready to sort of slam him to the ground immediately. And you're thinking, what is that? Like, that just does not seem like any, is it going to have any chance at all? Like, the thought process on that play call doesn't make any sense. So they've got to work it out. Like, it is not functioning. Teams are doing a better job defending, and it might just be that the line is not doing a good enough job and not executing the scheme as intended right now. And, as I kind of look up and see the Niners running the ball very effectively with Christian McCaffrey, if they can get to that, like, hey, here's a 7-yard run, here's an explosive run. Okay, now you can have a couple of 2-yard runs, but you keep it ticking along. They just don't do that. It feels like today is the running game. And although they've taken a few steps forwards recently, that today feels like the running game. And they're much more likely to get a Jackson Smith-Njigba long throw completion, or even to Cooper Kupp, than they are to actually run the ball well. Right.
I think the worst, obviously, we all remember the debates probably that started in 2017 that about, do you need to run the ball, and should you run, or should you throw more on the running passing debates. If there's one thing that I did pick up out of that was quite interesting, was the need for the run to set up play action. And I think you're seeing quite clearly that the Seahawks play action game is in pretty rude health. And they're not needing to convince teams that the run's going to be effective for that play action to work. So to that end, if I'd be a lot more worried about the running game if we couldn't pass off the back of it at the same time. But given that we can, and Darnold's still slinging it pretty well, it's not, I get why they need to run the ball eventually, but doesn't strike me as a pressing concern. I don't think that's what's stymieing us scoring a load of points.
Baylor B says Darnold is better than Russ and Gino. Well, he certainly is at the minute. I'm going to hold fire on saying he's better than Russ was at Russ's peak in Seattle, because he's pretty spectacular. But we will see.
I do think top to bottom, this is the best Seahawks team we've had for quite a while.
Oh yeah,
I was just thinking, they went 12-4 in the COVID season, but I think this is the best team they've had since 2017.
Oh yeah, I'd agree with that. The thing is that they feel like a team that can. The league's all over the place, isn't it? Let's be honest. Like, there's no like obvious like 4 or 5 teams that are way better than everybody else. Like, everybody's kind of losing a game they shouldn't lose. The Seahawks are no different. They're as good as probably most of the top teams in the league. They're in a group of about 10 or 12 that you can feel like, yeah, they're a good team. They're good football teams. The problem is, though, Adam, is they've not beaten anybody that you go, like, when the Broncos went to the Philadelphia Eagles and won last week, you think, oh, that's a statement win. That's a really good win. Seattle. I don't think Seattle winning in Pittsburgh, for example, is a statement win. The Steelers have too many flaws. They have a very old quarterback. I think it's going to take, beating a top team, or beating a few of them, like beating the Rams twice this year, or winning against the Texans, the Commanders, and the Rams, going on a bit of a run to sort of say, okay, now I can really believe. Because at the minute, Adam, I still feel that this is a team that's good, not great.
Mm-hmm.
That it looks to me like a team that's going to potentially get like the wild card or win the NFC West, and then they may well win that wild card game, but will ultimately come up against someone who's better and will lose. And until you have seen them do what the Broncos did last week, go to the Eagles and win a game and go toe to toe with like a top team. I know what people will say in the comments, like the Eagles were crap again on Thursday and lost to the Giants. So maybe the Eagles aren't that good, but it's sort of the optics, isn't it, of beating a team like that on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think even the Commanders would be a win on the road Sunday Night Football that people would take notice of, but probably wouldn't resonate in the way that going in and beating Philly was for the Broncos last week, even if the Commanders might be a better team right now than Philadelphia. But it's as much the prestige of who you're beating and the name brand that you're beating than the actual 53 players that you're beating on a Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah. They've got to sort this home stuff out as well. I mean, like, they've got to beat the Texans. They've got to start winning games at home, and they've got the Texans, they've got the Cardinals at home coming up. Their road games, they've got 3 of the next 5 are on the road against the Commanders, the Rams, and the Titans. So, and then they play the Vikings at home. They've got to kind of win those games. They've got to be able to go and win these home games because look, when you are so good on the road as they clearly are. Like, just imagine if you just won most of your home games, you'd be effing right up there, right in the top echelon. Canadian Hawk says, "Evening, gents. How about Byron Murphy? 2 sacks, 4.5 on the year, 7 pressures. Do you think he's developing into a blue chip player up the middle?" I think it's too early to say that he's developing into a blue chip player. As Christian McCaffrey's just scored a touchdown for the Niners, sadly, so they're up against the Buccaneers. If they beat the Buccaneers, it's going to really piss me off, Adam, because they've not got any players. Like the Niners, they're all injured, and they're in Tampa Bay. Like, it's not in San Fran; it's in Tampa Bay. Like, if the Buccaneers blow this, I am never going to bloody forgive Baker Mayfield. He's going to go from one of my favorite players this season to the player that annoys me the most. So, Baker, I hope you're listening. Well, he's not, but I hope you win this game. Byron Murphy, I don't think he's become a blue chip player yet, Adam. But I'm very grateful to see him playing the way that he is, because it's better than last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the kind of player that would be on, NFL top 100 list in a year's time if the season ended right now. But I think we're starting to see why the investment was made in him. And look, we need to. There's only so long you can go on, nurturing and waiting for your best players to make a statement. If you're the players that you put this massive investment in, like, look at Gray Zabel, what he's done for that offensive line. It's fantastic, and it's exactly what you need with your first round picks. And it's harsh on Byron Murphy because he plays in a position where it is probably quite difficult to sparkle, but he needs to turn in to Leonard Williams at some point, because that's what the investment was made in him. It's a lot to ask, but he will expect that he can do it. He'll be watching and telling his mates that I can be that good one day. So at some point, we want to see it as fans. It's not to be critical. It's out of support. We want to see him become great, and ultimately the way that teams are going to, the way you're going to elevate yourself from being a good to great team is the big investments you make have to start paying off.
And with 4.5 sacks so far, if he can get up towards 10 sacks at the end of the year, that's a fantastic season. So
yeah,
that'd be a nice target for him. Right, a couple more super chats and then we'll wrap it up because we've done well over now. Take 610 says, some people think the Raiders could trade for Russ. Could you imagine Russ, Gino, and Pete all in the same building? I'll tell you now, Taker, there is no chance that Pete Carroll is trading for Russell Wilson. There's no chance of that. 0%.
I mean, but bless him, Russell. Obviously, he got booed on Thursday night in a couple of plays, and Brian Dable was looking to make medical malpractice to get his quarterback on the field because he hates Russell Wilson that much, but Wilson was like compounding it by reposting all the Giants stuff on Instagram, like, yeah, my man Cam Scadaboo, and the win. It's just tragic. It's so bad. I can't believe it's come to this with him. I can, because I was saying it for years that this was going to happen when he was like in Seattle still doing well, that I just couldn't see him ever having a sort of legacy. But God, it's got, for the guy that probably thought he belonged in New York, it couldn't be a worse place for him to be.
I mean, he's in the same boat as Carroll and Belichick, really. By sort of trying to carry on, he's making it worse. And I mean, I still think it's, when I think Richard Sherman talks a load of bollocks, frankly. And when he said what he said the other week about, well, Russ only succeeded because the LB, I mean, it's absolutely blatant nonsense. I mean, the stats when the LB had gone from, I mean, Russell Wilson carried the Seahawks for multiple seasons after the LB had finished. And it changed the game. You know, people like Baker Mayfield are not the top overall pick. Kyler Murray's not the top overall pick if it's not for Russell Wilson. But he is sort of making things worse for himself and his legacy by just persevering with this. And I'm not getting political at all. There was a famous quote in the House of Parliament here when Tony Blair was coming to the end of his time, I think it was, and David Cameron, who eventually ended up becoming the Prime Minister, said to Blair in what ended up being quite a famous quote, he was the future once. And I kind of feel like that he's Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. He's kind of like someone's looking over at Wilson saying he was the future, like he was the future of the NFL. And now Jackson Dart's come along and he's kind of reminding Russ of what that feels like. Like everyone in New York is jacked about Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo and could not be less enthused about the thought of Russell Wilson having to come in even for one snap. Like they don't want Russell Wilson in the game. So it's tough. It must be really tough for him to sort of feel not wanted like that. But I do hope when everything's finished, which is close for Russell, that he will be able to, we'll be able to remember the good times, because I don't want us to never be able to watch some of those highlights from 2012 onwards, because there's some cracking moments that he's the heart. And this one says, Max with a sack. Max Crosby must have. I'm just looking up now. I was thinking Max Crosby just a sack fumble, but I think Cam Ward, I think he just threw it awkwardly, so I thought that was going to count. Max the sack would a first, a second, and Maffei get it done. Also looks like Fred Warner is out for the year. Is that true?
Yeah, I think you went off in an aircast when you were. People have been saying in the chat.
Oh my God!
So another one they've lost.
You see, I take no pleasure in this.
No, that's awful.
Because I actually like. First of all, Fred Warner was a blog favorite, so I'm just going to throw that out there right now. Okay, I love Fred Warner, like, because he's probably the Niner that I've liked the most over the years, with perhaps Trent Williams up there as well, just for the way that they play. And I hate that. I hate seeing him, and also I hate seeing the fact that Niners are beating the team that we couldn't stop. We couldn't stop if you gave Baker Mayfield a shot put to play with in the game last week. He would have still converted a 3rd and 16, right? And yet, against the Niners, they're winning the game 10-7, and they're doing it without Fred Warner, like well as Nick Bosa, as well as the quarterback.
Kittle.
Ricky Pearsall's not playing. Half the secondary's out. It's just crazy. I mean, you have to give credit to the coaches in San Francisco, but it pisses me off that they're doing what they're doing with so little, and it annoys me that Fred Warner's got injured, because I want to beat the Niners at the best. I don't want to beat the Niners reserves when we play them again, and we have to win that game now because we lost them in week 1. So back to the question, Adam, before I let you go. A first, a second, and Maffei for Max Crosby. Would that do it for you, or?
I mean, what? Yeah, I suppose yes, but why would the Raiders? What are they going to get from Boye Maffei now? Good player, but they're going to have to re-sign him anyway. It's not like if I was the GM of the Raiders, I'd be thinking, well, why are you throwing him in? What's that going to do for the trade value, given that he's out of contract? So, I'd probably be very happy if that was the deal offered. But I think if it was 2 1s that we're talking about, I don't think Maffei, it would be enough contractually to relegate one of the 1s into a 2 as well, given that it's not like the Raiders are going to be making any waves going forward the rest of this season.
They've just picked Cam Ward off, and the Titans are an absolute disaster zone, and Cam Ward is not going to be any more successful than Will Levis was there. Right, there we go. Thank you to everybody for their super chats. Thank you to the listening live numbers. Fantastic. Really appreciate that. Thank you for doing it. As always, I have more than one favor to ask of you. Can you like the video, please? Really important that you do that. If you could leave a comment in the YouTube comment section as well, even if it's just to say go Hawks, that'd be massively appreciated. Please do subscribe. The numbers are creeping up, so let's subscribe to that. Get those. If you're not subscribing already, and about 40% of you aren't, please do subscribe. One other little favor: when the stream is finished, the hype button will be available on the YouTube app, not on your desktops, not on your laptops or your stuff like that, but I think on the tablet and on the phone, you will be able to go onto this page for this video, and along the bottom next to the like and all of those buttons, you'll see hype. If you could press that as well. I don't really know what it does, but everybody's doing it and saying, please hit the hype button. So if you could do it, it's supposed to promote videos that otherwise don't get loads and loads of views. So that'd be much appreciated as well. Adam, as always, love your time. Best of luck to Robbie, who you may wonder is not here today. He's competing in a CrossFit challenge, and Robbie was sent us some videos, and he's doing things that he did a handstand and walked for about 50 yards while in a handstand, Adam, which I couldn't even do a handstand. I mean, I'm quite strong, but I can't do I'm a big 6'3.5" lump, so I can't do a handstand. Like, the fact that he was doing a handstand was crazy to me. He was unbelievable what he was doing there.
It was mad. And also, speaking of good luck, I think both Rob and I had mad experience watching the Mariners game on Friday night, which neither of us normally do. My dog woke me up to go to the loo at 1 a.m. on Friday, so just in time for the game. And I thought, well, I'll watch the first inning in bed. And all of a sudden, it was 5:30 a.m. and I'd watched the whole bloody game. I was absolutely gripped. And to those of you out there who are Mariners fans as well as Seahawks, I think we both have a passing interest, but to the proper fans out there, like, we really are thinking of you. And I so hope for all of you that you get over the line, because having seen my team get over the line properly in May, and the relief that gives, there's nothing like it. And I deeply hope for all of you that you get the chance to happen with your friends and your families now, because it's time. And it was just brilliant watching those scenes on Friday. I almost found it quite emotional watching it. It was just fantastic.
Well, I put the Mariners hat on because I know they're playing later. I am not a big baseball person. I don't really have enough room in my life for another sport. But to finish off, as soon as we're talking about it, I decided to stay up and just I was going to follow it a little bit. I don't have access. You subscribe to the channel, Adam, don't you, where they show the baseball in this country, but I don't.
Yeah.
So you were able to watch it. I couldn't watch it and was following it on the ESPN tracker and Twitter. So and I was watching they put the highlight clips on the Major League Baseball Twitter account, so I could watch it back once I'd seen something had happened. So I was doing that. And then once I tweeted out saying I'm basically following this game at 3 a.m. in the morning on ESPN's play-by-play, I was suddenly besieged by people saying, you can have my account for this and you can do all that. So I was able to watch the game from like the 7th inning onwards. And it got to the point where when it was like in the 12th inning, I was thinking, I really need to go to bed. I have work the next day.
Yeah, we had a full weekend of like double parenting. My wife and I with my son all weekend. She's like, you're going to ruin the weekend. But I couldn't go to bed.
It got to 5 a.m. and I was thinking, I really have to go to bed. But I've stayed up this long. I have to see it through now. Like, I can't go to sleep. I'll just be wondering what happened.
Yeah, I tried in the innings when the Tigers were hitting. I tried to get my head down, and my heart was and I was looking for any reason to check my phone again. So I found myself trying to close my eyes during the Tigers innings, and then waking up and putting my headphones back in for the Mariners.
Well, I stayed up all the way to the end and went to bed as my children were waking up in the morning. So I was absolutely bloody exhausted yesterday. But I can't do that today because tomorrow is a massive work day. But when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I will do is watch the highlights from the Mariners game. So good luck to everybody. And I know you keep seeing people crying in the stands and stuff. So I hope that it all comes off for you, and it makes for a great double weekend of the Seahawks winning and the Mariners winning. So good luck to them. Adam, massive thank you. Like, subscribe, hype the video, all of that stuff. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. I'm going to write some thoughts on the blog now. So go and check those out. Until next time, bye for now.